Welcome back here to Intel Extreme Masters at the analysis desk here with Crumbs and Papa Smithy. I know it's been a while. Hopefully you still remember us. We've been here the whole time, you know. Still grinding, still figuring out how to analyze the game.
You made that joke about when we started because we started with the same rotations, a bit on the nose now, a little bit later into the broadcast. We finally saw game one, an interesting one. We really focused on what G2 could do in their draft, but what actually happened this game, how it played out, and specifically how far Rengar got ahead, really turned the game on its head.
It was all about play, and you got to remember that when he gets kills, he gets percentage increase on his attack damage. Those bone tooth necklace stacks just adding up early on and allowing him to just go for anybody else. And what happens is that when you have a Rengar that's so fed, nobody can go into the jungle and acquire any vision. You saw that the Sivir was getting one shot at points, which really constricts the plays that G2 could make overall. And just as we expected, G2 mostly completely reactive to what ROX had to offer.
And like you said, this is all facilitated by Sungwon in the jungle. And it all started with that kind of awkward 1v1 that happened between himself and Trick. And Trick, you know, got caught out by face-checking there. And that speaks volumes to what ROX Tigers did throughout the game. A lot of it was based on their excellent vision control, especially time and time again, we saw them make plays in the red side jungle of G2.
And look, expectations here, you know, expect Rengar to be farming. We've seen so many Rengars actually up in CS against Graves and other matchups, just casually farming and not looking for lane pressure. It feels like Trick was just, you know, not expecting the early invade that came through from Sungwon, 1v1ing down a Graves, then also being really decisive with the first use of the Thrill of the Hunt. This Rengar was massive, very fast in the game.
And speaking of not expecting, once again, we can't criticize it enough because it keeps happening. The Shen ultimate being used to save people, that's just not right because you end up not generating plays for yourself. So you slow your team composition down and then you end up having a losing matchup in the top side and your gangplank gets to be the most fed member by a significant margin.
Fed, farmed, everything was going
right. Yeah, because you slow down so much and the Shen ultimate just has to stop being used defensively if G2 want to be proactive and want to win this game.
And a lot of this came through because essentially it was ROX that was forcing the plays. ROX were the team that said, okay, we're going to be the one to be proactive here. And they've all started realistically from that bot lane tier 1 dive, set up by some really cool play coming out from the Thresh, you know, just saying, you know, we've seen it before. It is this fake lantern gank that we see sometimes. You know, you bait people out with it. The replay's happening.
We're seeing it on the replay, and this was actually the fake lantern gank that Mado was famous for many years ago as the Drake is being taken. So Key's just causing pressure, allowing the wave to be put forward. And G2 like, okay, well, nothing happened that time. He's just going for the zoning play. The key thing is that the play continues, and the rotation that comes, you can see Cassiopeia is walking down just as Drake starts to fall down. Cassiopeia is spotted, but no vision whatsoever on Sungwon. Still, understandable he's on that side of the map, given that Drake went down. But Key, this time around, it is a really nice collapse from ROX, and it can't understate how important it was for ROX to keep Snowball in this game. They had Rengar as a solo frontline, very fortuitous that he's the one who's strong. They had the same trio of Gangplank, Jhin, and also the Rengar that we saw from Unicorns of Love yesterday. Yeah. We kind of criticized a little bit. But when Rengar is as powerful as he was, could build a serrated Dirk and tanky because he was doing so well, he could dive in. The game was on the terms of ROX, and the fact that they could keep accelerating it, that's ROX's game plan always.
And the addition of the Thresh into the Sivir and Tamkench just means that they can never walk up. They're always in threat range, and you saw right there that play where he flash plays. It looked like he might have just committed for Tamkench, but they go for more. You have the Gangplank ultimate, and I gotta say I was very impressed with Key's Thresh this time around. I was really hesitant for what we saw from the group stage play, but right now he's on fire.
I mean, you said Key needed to be landing these skill shots, needed to be making these kind of plays, and he was. I mean, he stepped up that game.
But think of another game where they don't have the fast start, and it's still the same comp. In the open, if you're fighting this game as the AAAD wants to fight it under an enemy turret, you don't get the same value out of Sungwon ulting and zoning 280 carries because they're not sure exactly which angle he's coming into. You look at the wave clear and sure, Gangplank situation, he's probably split pushing. Jhin doesn't have much wave clear. Cassiopeia has slow wave clear. If this game starts off with a couple of kills for Trick, if this game is paid at the pace of G2, I think the comebacks are situational at best. So they were so it was so much on Rengar setting the tone of this game that allowed the game to go as calmly as it did for ROX.
Well, Sungwon gave ROX a huge length of rope to work with here, and that rope they used to completely push their advantage. But we saw G2 have a little bit of life left in them. I mean, admittedly, we never really thought that they were going to make it back fully, but they did manage that sneaky Baron play. You know, they timed the backs of ROX and they went straight for it, and that was the one glimmering hope of light that we had from G2.
Right, it was good to recognize that they could have gone for the Baron, but to give more context to the situation, it was right after a ROX victory team fight where they decided to go for a Dragon at the same time the Baron was up. G2 decides to use, I think it was Stand United to get back into the pit and try to rush down that Baron. They almost lost it, some kind of fiasco around the blast cone, but otherwise, that Baron call was really the only glimmer of hope, but immediately lost in the team fight once again. And if that's the only play you've got, you really need to reassess what's going on. You know, you can't really blame them. There have been outside circumstances.
No, it wasn't a clean close by ROX, and as you say, G2 can at least say, okay, well, this play worked really well. The teleport play around the Baron worked really well. We're actually seeing a replay now on our screens of another fight where they tried to really overextend and engage super hard. This is Corki engaging with Shen ultimate, and it's playing into a team that can turn. This was with Mickey out of the fight, Sungwon really nice, and this is some good team fighting from ROX Tigers. The game went on a long time after this fight, and again, it wasn't super clean close from ROX.
And I think that flash from Sven on the gangplank really shows how behind G2 felt like they were, because that was an unnecessary move to make. You could have just backed off, catch the waves, catch a breath of fresh air, and push again. Understand that you're scaling. It's going to take you multiple fights to get back into the game, as opposed to, had those kills happen, let's pretend that those would have worked. That's an instant Baron, and you go for like the riskiest, highest reward play that could immediately swing things in your favor.
And you know, G2 were trying to make these moves, and they were trying to make these big team fight comebacks. And, you know, we saw them have elements of success. We know when you pick the Sivir, we expect them to run that Sivir in the late game into some sort of team fight situation. I mean, it ended up being super defensive and wave clearing. And then we get to the point where G2 think that they can take on that Elder Dragon after taking down one member, and it's like rubbing salt in the wounds. It was a fiasco for them at that pit.
Yeah, we're going to see finally the replay. Remember, this is 4v5. It was already a death on Gangplank. He wasn't going to get back to the fight. And Sungwon does so much work zoning on the back, and it's all about the indicator on the Rengar being on Corki the whole fight. Just solo kills. It becomes a 4v4 from here, and sure, there's a gold lead, but this is very well fought.
Did Trick use Smite to get some HP back?
Yeah, he was going to die just to tanking the Elder Dragon. That's why he didn't have Smite up and allowed ROX to recommit. And this was just how extended it was, because someone's buying time with Rengar on.
And the thing is, in a situation like that, ROX makes the right move. It's late game. A team fight can kind of end the game, and it's all about winning the fight. The objective securing doesn't really matter. It's the positioning. It's how you fight right afterwards, and they were prioritizing that, whereas G2 went for the Dragon. They committed themselves to the back of the pit. The carries were split off, and so they had no chance of ever winning that fight.
And I think it would be unfair of us not to talk about Lindarang this game because, you know, admittedly, he was given a nice platform to work with. I mean, he was given free time and space. Shen wasn't really opposing him that much, but he, like you said, at one point, me and Papa Smithy were discussing it was a 10K gold lead, and he was 6K of it. He was over half of the gold lead for ROX Tigers. He was complete nuisance in that side lane, and G2 over and over again committed resources to dealing with the gangplank and lost neutral objectives like Baron, for instance.
I mean, those resources were also committed after he had 4 or 5 items, as other objectives, like you say, Baron, were being taken. The first time out when we had the first game before the remake, we saw some ganks to top. We saw some here as well. But this can happen. You know, when you lose as a triple AD comp vision control, you can't really send or deny Rengar from just being a threat to every lane. Gangplank ends up having pressure relieved because the rest of his team is doing so well, and that's why I was just casually piling on the gold. It was a return of Gangplank, even without the Heart of Gold and Philosopher's Stone to help him out.
Rest in pieces, Heart of Gold. I think it would be obtuse of us not to mention the pause. Sure. Because, look, I mean, you don't want to mention it. You want to make sure that, you know, this is something that happens in live production events. But as a player, pausing for over 2 hours, how is, especially Crumbs, you'll know, how does this affect your competitive mindset?
So the issue is that you come into this and you think to yourself, all right, I'm going to try to peak at the time that the game starts. Like, right, I'm going to peak at this hour. I'm going to eat my food, make sure that everything is set accordingly, and then the pause kind of dwindles that as you no longer feel that. So you kind of crash. Let's say that you're having coffee, caffeine, whatever it may be. You're now in the downfall of all that. And so you're not really as excited. You're not as thrilled. Maybe you had a crazy level 1 or whatever you wanted to do. is no longer there as the cards have already been shown. That element of surprise is gone, and so the game doesn't carry that same kind of excitement that the players came into it at first.
I mean, ROX Tigers, like we said, had the least sleep, had the least practice coming into day one, didn't affect them on that day. G2 did look sluggish in the start of this game, which allowed the Rengar to get going. Let's hope we can shed all of that. We should hopefully be able to go straight forward into the second game very soon, and let's see if the cards can be a bit more even this time.
Yeah, let's hope you're not going to get a complete reset. Let's not beat around the bush. It's going to be difficult to completely wipe that slate clean and say we're going to go right back to where we were beforehand. But you know, go through this draft phase. Got to mentally prepare yourself, settle yourself for this game, and you know, and maybe G2 can bring it back and get into a series. I've got word that we are moments away from Champion Select, so hopefully we'll be in it ASAP. But, you know, you've got to feel for the players in that sense as well. I mean, it must be tough to come back in, especially on a whole reset of a game when you might have had a game plan that you were initiating and it went well, for instance, in the first half, and then you had to remake and come back. I mean, it can be really tough for those players.
Well, you got to remember that the winner of this match also has to play the grand final, whereas the next matchup is just kind of their resting. They never had to turn themselves on and then just wait and kind of keep themselves in an idling position until the next matchup. So that does favor the opposing team.
Just seeing players almost ready for Champion Select here. Speaking of Champion Select, gentlemen, what are you expecting? Do you think Rengar now becomes a ban, or do you just think that Rengar was so good because maybe the players weren't feeling as comfortable going into that situation?
I mean, again, it's snowballed, and ROX are the sort of team you would back on Rengar. They can play decisive, explosive early games. They do play well around 4-1 pressure and a split pusher. And Flash Wolves in the next series will certainly have Rengar be a contested pick for them as well. They're a big Rengar team as well. So we'll find out that answer very soon. But if it's available at first pick, I could certainly see it being first picked by ROX Tigers.
ROX sticking to the plan with their Rumble ban. Varus off the cards as well. And Camille, the first ban here for G2. We'll see whether they choose to ban Rengar, but LeBlanc, that red side ban that stays an absolute 100% must, even though we have seen one game of it here at IEM. That game was so crushing that we'll never see it again, I believe. Shen, the final ban here for ROX Tigers. G2 now have to make that decision. You know, you still have other things up that you may want to consider banning, like the Jace, or do you just straight up ban that Rengar?
And so they've shown the Shen ban, and I think it's just a matter of they don't want to play blue side Gangplank without knowing what they're getting themselves into. So just get rid of it now. Don't deal with it with tank on tank. This way, you can kind of make sure that the game is in a more even playing field when it comes to globals.
G2 really thinking about it, and Malzahar is that final ban. ROX have the opportunity to make that first pick Rengar for Song 1, but Jace is up and Jace is locked in. ROX very confident with that pick.
Still a lot of big answers that can come up from G2. You could also get Jhin Karma, like a really strong bot lane, if G2 are happy to blind pick their support at this point. Jhin has been a very high priority, and speaking of high priority, be surprising to see Maokai in the first round.
Well, given that you just lost to a Gangplank, right? There's not an awful lane for the Gangplank to play.
Yeah, that's true. It is a consideration. It would also kind of negate what Crumbs was talking about, the blue side disadvantage of having to blind pick the Gangplank. And
oh boy.
Oh boy.
Maybe try and recreate their comp.
It's going to be the Jhin, obviously. That's generally been the prioritized AD carry pick when Varus is off the table. And now it will be the Rengar for Trick. That has got to have huge confidence from him to pick that, given his past performances in this tournament on that Rengar.
And Songwon can just default onto the Elise that has been his pick in Korea. He's had a ban against him earlier this tournament. He's polarizing on this pick. He will still be going for a very aggressive invading style.
Oh,
And that's a lock-in on
there
Ziggs.
we go. That's not something we've seen at this tournament yet, but we have seen it in some instances in the meta, and Ziggs gets locked in.
so this is exactly the dangers that we were thinking when you pick the Rengar early on without securing the lanes. ROX has already secured 2 incredibly pushing lanes. That's most likely going to be a Ziggs in the bottom lane as an AD carry, your Jace in the mid lane, which are already 2 lanes that can tear down turrets like butter, and then you have Elise, who is amazing at grouping up and sieging.
So as G2, do you need to lock in that support to give you some element of push, I suppose, or help you push? And it's not going to be the Karma, it's going to be the Zyra this time.
A Karma ban is probably something you'd want to do here. Anything that gives speed and inherent, situational tankiness. Because now Trick is the solo engage, and engage is what you have to do against a comp that is going to siege down from range. So expecting a Karma ban, still no 100% guarantee. There's a lot of power left on the board. G2 looking for that first.
I gotta say, I'm feeling some disappointment with the lack of Karma that we've seen in the tournament so far. Such a tremendous pick that would really offer not only engage, but a lot of protection against a poke that is skill shot reliant that ROX has.
So Misfortune comes out for G2 as a first ban here. Are you expecting them to follow up with Karma after that? I mean,
It's kind of how it depends how you look at it. Karma or Tahm Kench, for different reasons. Karma for lane and for teamfight utility, and Tahm Kench for the disengage.
It's going to be an Orianna ban here for ROX Tigers.
Think about what champions that limits when it comes to, or picks that it's good against. Both Cassiopeia and Ryze could be affected there. Ryze especially, though it's not necessarily a massive Mickey pick.
Waiting for G2 to make their final ban here.
Be surprised if it wasn't a support.
Yeah, you would think so. Tahm Kench, there you go. Papa Smithy, one of the two options, leaving that Karma open though.
Perhaps a Syndra ban once again from the ROX Tigers here, just making sure that there is no picks left for the mid lane. There it is, and then that puts the Ryze, the Corki perhaps into the matchup for ROX, but whatever it is, that means that Jace is going to have advantage and a lot of kill pressure when you have to deal with Elise in the mid lane.
Yeah, that's going to be fairly hard, and it's going to be the Maokai thought of here for G2.
So my question to you, Crumbs, is it Zed time as a last pick here for G2?
Is it Zed time?
Is it?
You think about Zed here, Zed looks really attractive in this particular game to warp what is a very simple playstyle. When there's a Sieger, if you can have a split pusher who has massive map pressure, it forces the Siege team to move.
I think the Zed here is really a backs to the wall kind of situation, because it will either succeed tremendously or it will fail miserably, because when you're dealing with the Jace and the Elise, those two can really hammer down on what Zed does, considering that you have a weaker matchup in the jungle early. So it really will come down to how strong is Perk's laning phase into the Jace from Mickey, and I can't really favor Zed in that.
Going pushing hard. Renekton will also push Maokai. If they go for Karma, they will have incredibly hard push in bot lane.
Every lane shoves here.
And this is the hardest time for someone like Trick, as they could be moving over to the Lulu also.
Hasn't been locked in fully yet. They are going to take the Lulu.
There it is.
Still has decent shove though. I mean, Ziggs does it himself, right, in that bot lane. So
we've seen different maxes though with the Lulu. We actually saw Whimsy max, the W max in the last time that Lulu came out, I guess as a counter to Zed, in some ways having the polymorphs. So question is now, G2, for the last pick, will it be something like the Zed? You see Ignite and suddenly you're like, could definitely be the Zed in the mid lane.
One can hope.
Or, interesting.
That is spicy, all right.
It's going to be the Ahri locked in, finally, for G2. And that's, again, first instances of an Ahri in this competition now. Going to quickly ask you for your predictions before we head into the game, gentlemen.
I got to say, I absolutely love ROX's draft here. Tremendous lanes all around, power picks left, right. I think they actually have this 2-0.
Pushing lane's been the story of this tournament. Going to go with that, even though the Ahri into Jace does give some kill pressure in the mid lane. G2.
There we go. ROX Tigers is the predictions from our analysts here. I do have to give a shout out to our sponsor and partner here at the Intel Extreme Masters, The Score Esports. Go and check them out online at thescoreesports.com, iOS or Android, for live updates here at IEM, live updates for esports across the globe, as well as news, guides, and everything that you could want in the esports scene. Now, going to hand it over to our wonderfully talented caster duo of Munchables and VoDs for this second game.
Thank you very much, guys. We are here for the second game in this semi-final. It's G2 against ROX. The ROX Tigers, our Korean team, 1-0 up, but G2 not looking to let them get this clean sweep.
But it's difficult when you look at the draft. The analyst desk have already highlighted how much strength the ROX Tigers do have in terms of their lane priority. Their ability to push is very strong in top, mid, and bot. And it just enables Elise so well. It's going to fit into Sanghwan's playstyle perfectly as he's going to look to invade in the early game.
Yeah, Sanghwan is going to be having a wonderful time this game, so long as everything goes according to plan. Here we are, G2 against ROX Tigers. Can G2 keep EU's hopes alive in this semi-final? Let's find out as we are on to Summoner's Rift for Game 2 in this series. And what a game this is shaping up to be. Just look at the drafts for both of these teams. I don't even know where we want to go with this one first, VoDs.
Well, we can start off with the level 1 because it looks like the G2 are looking to set up another play.
And this is exactly what they did last game. Just stack up next to their red buff and wait until someone comes in.
But this time, ROX, they have the ability to check it. The reason why G2 are doing this is because during the regular season, ROX Tigers would often go for this level 1 play where they group up as a 5-man unit and try to invade through the top side to get very early vision, identify where the enemy jungler is starting. during their first clear. And so G2 were just preparing for that. We saw it game 1, we're seeing game 2, but now ROX, they're trying to take advantage of that, and they have to be careful.
Mickey, realizing that the cat is out of the bag, has to back away out of there. But the ward down on the blue buff here for ROX, so getting a good bit of vision.
But look at this. G2 set up early on. This is brilliant from ROX because G2, they originally set up as a 5-man unit to prevent ROX from getting this deep vision. But then as they split up, ROX realized, oh, there's no one bot side, let's get some vision down bot. And then when G2 moved away from top, ROX just sneaking in like, oh, we're going to drop a ward in here. Now they've got vision over top side and bot side, and they know exactly where Trick is going to start. Perfect for the ROX Tigers, and this is going to set up nicely for Seonghwan in terms of his early path.
It's not often that you see in a game a team have complete vision control at just 1 minute and 40 seconds, but ROX have done a phenomenal job of getting just that. Linderang waiting for an opportunity. He wants an advantage in the lane, and he will be able to find it on to expect here. Should trade very well. Gets a bit of health back himself, but we've been talking about how these lanes are really going to be shoving. Let's start to look at this bottom lane, because Ziggs Lulu is going to be a very interesting lane to have to go against.
Now, it depends on what the Lulu chooses to max, because if you want to go for more push, then naturally you want to max the Q. But a lot of Lulus, as we saw yesterday, they actually went for a W max to play into the Z. This game, Key could go for an E-max, so you actually have more defensive capabilities. Helps a lot with the poke, as we see. Oh, Trick and miss!
He's been caught out in the mid lane. He's going to be exhausted. Flashes coming out left, right, and center. Charm lands. It's going to be first blood. Trick is on the board.
G2 with the aggressive level 1 plays. Trick comes out with the level 2 gank, and they get themselves first blood. But Seonghwan, he wants to try and respond in the top half of the map.
Yeah, not to be outdone. Seonghwan heading up towards this top lane. Trick will be around, though. Will Seonghwan actually be able to achieve anything? He wants to pressure onto these Krugs. He wants to find an opportunity. Don't think they can go for any kind of dive at this early stage.
Trick moving to the top side of the map, aware of the possible dive coming out from Elise. Nice response from Trick, and he will be able to get level 3. And now he wants to try and get his Krugs back.
Yeah, he's going to fight for the Stone Bros, but it's Seonghwan who gets engaged on Expect. Flashes forward. It's the second one for Trick. The Rengars this series have been indomitable. Flashing forward, though, Linderang wants this one. Will pick up a kill as Linderang trying to escape. He's so low on HP, and Expect will be able to finish it off. Double buff in the top lane, and G2 storming ahead.
ROX thought that they had a good snowball in game 1, but Trick says, see my snowball, as he picks himself up 2 kills 3.5 minutes into the game.
These fights looking cleaner than a Gillette shave so far in this match. Perks, sorry about that one, guys. Perks in this mid lane doing a decent job as well. He's going to be very happy with that assist. A lot of pressure on Trick's shoulders right now. He has to use these kills effectively.
But this hasn't given us an opportunity to even talk about some of the more interesting matchups in the game much. I love Ahri. I've always wanted to talk about an Ahri. I've always wanted an Ahri game. But we have to get back to that in a little bit later on, because we see Trick. He takes advantage of the fact that Mickey, he's just standing a little bit too close to the top side of the river. At level 2, he's able to get the gank off. And the reason why Mickey is pathing this way is because he knows that Trick is starting top side. He's not expecting a level 2 gank. And he's just waiting for the full click. He knows that, if anything, Trick is more likely to go towards his blue, be towards the bottom side of the map. So he's just trying to stay towards where the Elise is, and he gets caught completely unawares. Just really good awareness from Trick to be able to take advantage of that.
And now Trick, a longsword and boots up over Seonghwan. Very different start to the game to what we saw in this first match. But taking a look back at that mid lane, as you were saying.
But I mean, like, before we get to that, we have to look at like a lot of the other things, because remember now, in the top lane, Linderang should have a pushing wave, but he doesn't because of the double buff that Expect picked up. And we don't have time because there's another gank coming in mid.
Now we've got Perks going aggressive onto Mickey. Trick is going to be here, gets the slowdown. Can they finish him off? Seonghwan is here as well, 2v1. Mickey still surviving on this one, but there's good damage going down onto every single member. Health bars are low. Can anyone finish the job? Bowler doesn't quite land onto Seonghwan. And it's the disengage.
So G2, oh, Trick!
Back on in, Seonghwan just about survives with his life. Just under 100 HP there in the end.
I love this aggression from Trick. He is trying to silence the haters. Yes, he had a bad Rengar performance early on during the tournament, but he is playing out of his mind right now. getting so many effective early plays. He knew he could dive onto Songhwan because he has the item advantage, he has the level advantage, and he's able to force the flash out of the Elise.
And now we'll see where he funnels this aggression, boys. Going back towards that mid lane again. He does not want to leave Mickey alone. We'll get spotted out this time by that ward.
But we have to look at the overall state of the game because, again, back to top lane, Linderang. He doesn't have the same sort of push priority because his flash was down, Expect had double buff. It made it a lot easier for the Maokai to trade into the Renekton. In the mid lane, the constant aggression coming out from Trick makes it even harder for Mickey to get the constant push down. And you can see how effectively Trick, or Expect even, is trading back with Linderang simply because he has the level advantage. And in the bottom lane, early on, Ziggs isn't actually looking to get the push. The best thing he wants to do is get an early back, get the upgraded Lost Chapter, and then he wants to return to lane. That's when he really wants to start pushing. And so there hasn't been that much pushing power from ROX in the bottom lane, but now that he's got that major item, ROX key is going for the early shield max to mitigate a lot of the damage. That's where we'll see a lot more pressure from ROX in the bottom lane.
Sunline wants to take out Perks here. Nice sidestep on the Cocoon, though. Mitigates all of that damage. And we've got to say, this is nice play from G2 to play around Rox's strategy. Songhwan very low on this one. Repel comes on through. Perks is exhausted. Has to use the Spirit Rush to get over the wall, but it is going to be another kill. Perks goes back in. Mickey's got no mana. Can they get the bowler? He gets it completely. Orb of Deception. Double kill for Perks.
This is a beautiful start for G2 Esports. You could not ask for anything better on your mid lane assassin. Trick on the Rengar, 2-1 and 3 right now. G2 are answering so beautifully to the early game aggression of ROX Tigers.
Trick was the player that was being criticized on this team. And do you know what? He's come into this second game, kept his morale high, and now he's rolling ROX over. Can they keep it going?
But this is a great opportunity to finally talk about this Ahri pick, because looking at the draft, ROX knew that G2 wanted to go for the Zed. You heard the analyst desk talking about it. It is a good pick into the Jace, and it can be do or die. But the Lulu pick comes out, and it just dissuades G2 from going for it. Perks picks up the Ahri, and Ahri actually has a very weak laning phase. Her wave clear is not very good. Her base damages are not very good. She wants to get that Morellonomicon as early as possible. But until she gets that, a Jace just pushes her around like nothing else, especially when you have an Elise on the board. But thanks to the early aggression from Trick, thanks to his great start to the game, and thanks to Perks getting himself the double kill, he could not have asked for a better start, and he is reaching that power spike, which is going to enable him to take full control over the map.
If anyone had thought that in this series, EU's hopes of getting to the finals were dead, think again, because G2 are not going to go down without a fight here. And you've got to say, Perks, he's off to a phenomenal start. As you say, usually you'd expect him to be on the back foot here, but let's take another quick look at this
now
2v2.
Remember that Songhwan, he doesn't have his flash, thanks to the aggressive move made by Trick earlier on. Perks has a huge amount of mobility on this Ahri hitting level 6, and Mickey, he's still level 5. A great bowler from Trick is enough to enable Perks to get himself the double kill and pick himself up the Lost Chapter along with the Sork Boots, which is giving him a phenomenal lead in the mid lane.
And it has to be said, for the second game in a row now, Mickey is kind of underperforming in this mid lane. But we do have a fight. Linderang trying to force this one, but Perks has so much damage! Look at the burst! Trick going in onto Mickey. This is going to be surely more kills as Perk actually has to flash away from that one. But it's another 2 kills for G2. This is like a mirror of what we saw game 1.
This is how strong the Ahri can be if you go for those early skirmishes once she's already completed the early Sorcerer's Boots. ROX think that they can go for the 2 versus 2. I mean, it's a Elise and a Renekton versus a Maokai and a Rengar. They don't respect the fact that Perks can get the very quick collapse. They burst Elise down immediately, and this is going to open up the map for G2 to get themselves the first dragon of the game.
In 10 minutes, 8 kills so far. That's how bloodthirsty this game has been. Glitterlands doesn't quite manage to get that. It will be a first Cloud Drake, but the Mountain will be next. So in 6 minutes' time, expect a lot of focus around that Dragon Pit.
And now we need to see what else Perks can do with this Ahri, because you really want to be roaming around the map. And again, we look back, you can see ROX, they want to try and get something back. They feel like they can force the fight, especially with Key making a roam top. They just don't expect that amount of burst to come out from Perks. Just a huge amount of damage. You see it find the bottom lane.
Key's in trouble, but curtain call. Can't finish off the kills. Sang Yoon able to block those shots in the end. But, you know, this is another lane where we expected this to be a winning lane for ROX, expected them to just be shoving endlessly, but G2 staying even here.
We didn't get to see the initial setup, but something you always have to bear in mind is the all-in of this duo of Zyra and Jhin, right? If you get hit up by a single root, it becomes very easy to chain the CC, and even if you max the shield on Lulu, it's not going to do very much against this powerhouse duo. So you always have to be mindful of positioning, and bear in mind that Key has actually been roaming around a lot. And yes, Ziggs is very good at pushing, but he has to respect the pick power that this bottom lane has, so he can't be over-aggressive. He has to be very aware, especially if Mithy plays aggressively further up into the lane.
So what is it now that G2 have to do to continue to push this advantage and actually turn this lead into a victory?
Well, I want to see more utilization of the Rengar ultimate. Right now, Trick has just been using a lot of his poke, and Perkz needs to try and push his advantage in the mid lane because he is at Fedari, and he should be able to 1v1 Mickey.
Speaking of 1v1ing Mickey, he's going in for this one. Spirit Rush will be enough, but he doesn't have to stay in the fight. Trick sweeps it up.
Mickey playing far too aggressively right now. He has to respect the fact that Perkz is so fed. Rengar has the ultimate, and even Expect is coming out ahead in this 1v1 in the top lane. Everything is going so right for G2. And it all comes down again to Trick. This guy has been having a fantastic game. Yeah. He was praised for being one of the best junglers in Europe. He's had 2 MVPs. He is a good jungler that hasn't yet had an amazing performance throughout IEM. And finally, he is stepping up. He has had the great start, and you can see what he is able to do when he does get that great lead.
Well, ROX don't want to allow G2 to dictate this game. Lindarang going to teleport down to this bottom lane. They're going to try and force the first brick here. They're going to be racing against the top lane push of Expect, but I think they have managed to get that one, and that's what happens when you try and race a Ziggs for a tower. But G2, they are not going to be outdone. They get one in the mid lane. Love
the move from ROX. They realize that they're going to end up losing towers across the map, so they want to try and force something, and they end up just... Perhaps they could get a kill down bottom if G2 don't respect it. They're able to get that first tower. It will alleviate some of the pressure, but you can see G2, as you rightly said, responding very quickly. Expect continues to push in the top side. Perkz has been constantly shoving in that mid lane thanks to the early advantage that he was able to get, and they were able to take that first tower.
And one of the big things that people have been saying about Mickey is even when he's behind, he usually manages to stay even in CS. He stays in the game. Not this time. He is 20 CS down in that mid lane, on top of the 303 on Perkz Ahri. He's almost 2,000 gold ahead of his lane opponent right now. Perkz is doing a phenomenal job. But then up in the top side as well, we've got a hefty gold lead in favor of Expect, who he's got himself a 30 CS lead to talk about.
I mean, it's gold leads across the board from G2, and now we have to see how well ROX can perform because they are a very swingy team in the LCK. They rely a lot on getting that early advantage and then maintaining control. And while you could argue, yes, they could have closed out a little bit cleaner in game 1, they still played extremely well around vision, and I have nothing but respect for them and their ability to dismantle what was G2 in game 1. But now they're on the back foot. How do they deal with the pressure, and how effectively can G2 close out with the lead that they've got?
Well, it's only a tower apiece so far, so G2, they've got a gold lead, but not that many objectives. That's where they need to start to look now. But Trick just forcing everybody out of the ROX jungle, just walks forward and everybody has to respect that presence.
Look at the movement from G2 in the top half of the jungle. They realize that that top tower is the objective that they want. So now they're setting up a lot of vision around top side. They're having Perkz push in mid. And he may actually look for a roam down bot. You can see Expect is doing a bit of proxy farming. That means that they could look to go for a dive. That Maokai is very tanky this early on into the game.
And then Lindarang will have his ultimate available.
There they go.
Expect is going straight in for this one. Dominus does not give you nearly enough health to survive the damage that Perkz is outputting. This will be a bottom lane tower on top of the kill.
G2 are realizing that they don't need Perkz to secure that top tower. They have enough vision control to force the ROX Tigers back. And now they use Perkz to force the tower bot. Expect moving past the turret, setting up the farm to make the dive all the more easier. And when you're rooted in place, there's no way you're going to be able to dodge that charm.
5,500 is the gold lead. G2 are running away with this one. ROX, this is a different team to what we saw in game 1. They don't know what to do with themselves.
But it's almost like that this was the ROX from game one, right? This is exactly what we saw from ROX with their fantastic early start and utilization of the Rengar. G2 were able to do exactly the same thing, and all of these pushing lanes that ROX wanted to get for themselves were completely prevented. They couldn't take advantage of it thanks to the aggression coming out from Trick, and thanks to the top and mid just being entirely prevented in terms of the early advantages that ROX were supposed to have.
Now the Mountain Drake will be arriving onto the Rift. And I don't see any scenario where G2 can't just sweep this one up if they so choose to head towards that objective. But ROX putting some pressure in this top lane. Expect might need some help from some friends.
You can see that Perkz has been moved into a side lane. I think it would be smart for him now to start edging his way back towards the mid lane tower, as it looks like ROX are trying to go for a dive top.
Yeah, G2 aren't going to let it happen though, as Expect engages the fight. Keys has to use his ultimate on himself, but will be finished off by Trick in the end. Curtain call. Won't find any more targets, and Sven's been jumped on by Mickey, but he doesn't have damage to finish anything off. Exhaust is so potent in this kind of situation. Linderang trying to finish the kills. Dominus, as he goes under the tower, trades one back. Is 2 for 1 for G2, but Linderang, there's nowhere for him to go. Trick will be able to finish off this kill. Perkz trying to find even more kills elsewhere on the map. The last bit of Spirit Rush. It's another one for G2. 3 for 1 trade. They are indomitable.
G2 Esports are taking full control over this game. They see that ROX are trying to get a push down onto that top tier 1, and they do not let it happen. They force the engage, they know they have the gold lead, and they're able to win out on the fight. You can see immediate response, the flash in from Expect to guarantee the lockdown onto Key, and just keep your eyes on Jin in the backline, because he thinks that he's fine to continue throwing down damage, but then Mickey joins the fray. This is the recklessness that we've seen from Mickey, thinking that he can somehow turn around the fight with Linderang there behind him, but he just doesn't have the damage. He's too far behind. And while Linderang is able to get a kill, it isn't enough to turn the objective back in their favor. Overall, it actually ends up being a 4 for 1 in favor of G2, because Perkz is able to come off to the side and clean up the escaping Sungwon.
And in the meantime, Rift Herald picked up on top of everything else. G2, they have basically unlimited resources, it feels like, in this game.
But again, we have to watch their ability to close things out, right? Because we have seen the ability, I mean, we have to think back to game 1, the ability for G2 to just quickly snipe up that Baron and then suddenly stall out the game for even longer. If they leave windows, ROX will not hesitate to take advantage.
And let's bear in mind, oh, hang on, there's no time for that one. Sven's been caught. This is bad news for G2, but Perkz has arrived. They're trying to finish off Sungwon, who's searching for Midley, but won't find it. Shock blast from Mickey. The snipe comes on through. Trick isn't done, though. They still want to keep the fight going. Perkz has a lot of damage, but doesn't quite find his targets. It's a 2 for 1 for ROX.
Good pick from ROX, taking advantage of the good vision control that they have through the river. Sven thinks that they're in full control. They think that they can just easily make that rotation up, get some vision control back, and then ROX is able to punish them. They're able to get themselves 2 kills on the board, and this comes back to what we were talking about.
And one of the biggest things in this game is ROX, what they need to do is stall out, right? Look at their mid lane and AD carry. They've got a Ziggs and a Jace, basically unlimited wave clear. They will be able to stall. If G2 can't force a Baron, if they can't get an extra objective to help them push through, they might hit a brick wall.
The problem you have for ROX is that Renekton, his big value in a lot of the games right now is his ability to push, set up for early objectives. He has a decent mid-game spike, but he is extremely far behind the Maokai right now. So his late-game value is going to be very minimal. Mickey on the Jace, yes, he does have a big mid-game spike again with the lethality build, but if you're able to stack up a lot of early armor, which you can already see from several members of G2, that also decreases his late-game value. And while you have a lot of magic damage from Sang-Yoon, you're also lacking the fact that you have no late-game AD carry. So who's going to be that big damage dealer when you compare up against Sven, who's 1, 2, and 2 right now on this Jhin? So yes, while ROX definitely need to stall out for the time being, I would argue that their late game isn't even that strong. They just need to find picks. They need to force G2 to be out of position like they did onto Sven and just stymie the ability for G2 to be able to push onto the base of ROX.
And that is a very scary situation to be putting yourself in when you're essentially relying on mistakes from your opponents. We've got ROX in control of the area and Mithy just gets deleted.
And And again, this is just good setup from ROX. Even though they are behind, they are not giving up vision control. The top half of the river belongs to them, and G2 are just falling into the trap over and over. That is exactly the same place where Sven and Mithy just lost their life moments ago. And this is the proactiveness that we need to see from ROX. You can just see that they refuse to give up without a fight. And G2 here, again, it's just all about that vision. They don't realize that ROX has full control. They just walk straight into the Elise. And yes, they get the kill down onto the Elise, but the damage has already been done, and it stops a lot of the pressure that G2 wanted to exert. Like, that was a 6,000 gold lead before, and now it's only 4.5.
G2 it feels like kind of losing control of this game just a little bit. ROX.
Not just yet. I mean,
I don't want to overstate it. They are still in control, but ROX, with, as you say, their proactive play, keeping vision control, is slowing G2's kind of force down.
What we need to see is more from Perkz right now, because he can go off into a side lane. We're very confident that he can win a 1v1, and now we get to see it.
He's going to have to. Mickey's jumping onto him. Exhaust both ways right now. Trick going to be able to zone everyone away. He's been caught himself, though. Has to jump into the backline. Both exhausts have been used. Trick still surviving. Flashes out. Repel has to be used by Sung Hwan, but there's going to be a follow from Expect. They get the kill. Now they've got to find more. Sang Yoon will get rooted up. There's the charm, and it's a kill for Perkz.
G2 are able to win out on the fight after ROX Tigers tried to provide support for Mickey, but it ends up going so wrong, with Mithy being able to get that fantastic ultimate to buy time for G2 to get the collapse.
We've been talking about how reckless Mickey can be. Why would you force a 1v1 against a 6-0 Ari? That's not a situation you win, and G2 will punish heavily. They get 2 tier 2 towers and rocket that gold lead straight back up.
The hilarious thing is neither mid lane has even died in that exchange. Mickey doesn't even have to use his flash. You can see he feels it with the edge of night. He's able to win out. Both exhausts end up going down, but this isn't the important fight because Trick is the one that gets caught out of position. But note how tanky he is. Being level 12, he picked up a lot of armor early on. Sung Yoon doesn't quite do enough damage at this point in the game, and that provides enough time for Expect to be able to TP in, and G2 can get the response. This enables them to push into all of these outer objectives, and they force through onto these tier 2 towers, which enables G2 to extend their map control.
Yeah, and Trick actually getting that Spirit Visage early really helped him there. Obviously, Sung Hwan's been the one doing the damage in those picks that we saw earlier on. The magic resist helped, but also the heal that he got off of his Triumphant Roar just about kept him alive in that skirmish. And now 23 minutes into the game with a gold lead like this, G2 can consider the Baron. However, we know that Baron is a very scary objective and can throw games. Mickey is going to be the target. Can't really follow through when he's just going to flash away.
They get the flash out of Mickey, though, which is going to make it so much more difficult for him to sit in a side lane. But look at Perkz, he used his ultimate. Trick also used his ultimate, which means that they now have to wait a little while before they can try and force another pick, force another objective. Meanwhile, in the bottom lane, you've got Linderang just pushing, but Expect he's in a 1v2.
Expect just walks forward. He's basically not taking damage yet in this skirmish. He's actually just wins out a 1v2 trade. That's how far ahead this G2 lineup are.
I am Maokai, and this lane is mine. You try to force him back, but he does not care as G2 make their way back up to the top lane as they put their focus on this tower.
They should be able to finish this objective off. Just a couple more hits. Key so low just off a singular charm. And Expect wants to force the issue. He's all on his own, but Mithy will be there in the end to help him out.
He takes no damage. He heals more than he takes.
Yeah, and every ability they use get him closer to his passive. He's got the Spirit Visage as well. The healing coming through from this G2 squad, but look at this.
Look at all the vision set up from G2 in the top half of ROX's jungle. They are very likely aware that this Baron is going on, but they have no idea how to get there. You can see the pings coming out, but G2, they have their priorities set.
And I mean, ROX, they're in a situation where they are the ones now having to face check. Linderang using that dominance immediately. Mithy's taken very low, will be finished off. First casualty of the fight. The Baron gets taken down though. Perkz getting onto Linderang, but it's going to be Expect all on his own. He's the sacrificial lamb for this play, but he's going to be happy to trade his own life for Linderang's. The Baron is taken for G2.
Not the cleanest Baron in the world for G2. They did lose 2 members, but their priority was just buying time as they were able to pick up the objective. And now Trick, he's going for this tower.
Trick, not a care in the world on this one, finishes off that objective. Might have sacrificed his own life, though. This is going to be dicey territory.
Oh, he's
but
fine.
he just walks away with it.
So, confident play from Trick there. He is able to get himself another objective. Overall, you can't argue with G2. Again, not the cleanest, but they do secure the objective. And now they could look to set up Fort the Dragon. It's going to be spawning in about 10 seconds. And G2, with the gold lead that they have, an 8-0-3 Ahri, I mean, it will be very difficult for ROX to be able to contest.
Yeah, the only way I can see ROX getting back into this game is if they can shut down Perks right at the start of the fight, but it's so difficult to get onto an Ahri. That Spirit Rush is such a powerful ultimate, and he still has his flash available as well. Dragon is going to be taken away here by G2. In fact, they've decided to back away from that one. They're going to be going down to push these lanes and get control of this jungle.
They want to try and utilize the Baron buff to get the pushing lanes. They want to wait as well for Expect to start the push in the top lane. There's no need to force anything without Expect applying any kind of pressure in the top half of the map. Sven also ended up getting chunked out by Mickey. So G2, they're just trying to play the aggression game right now, just trying to gain control over the bottom half of the map, because this is where they want to set up their vision. If they can, they want to extend that vision line deep into the bottom half of ROX's jungle. Makes it much easier to push in towards these tier 3 towers.
And now Trick will be able to pick up that objective off the back of it. It's going to be a third Drake for G2, and it is a mountain. But we'll see. Where do they go from here? How can they use this Baron to great effect? Expect looking for yet another fight. This guy has no respect for the ROX players in this match. There's a nice snipe from Sven, and this could be a kill. Songhwan, he's got his flash available, but I don't think he can escape this one, as Expect will root him down, and it's another kill for Sven.
5 versus 4. This is going to make it so much easier for G2 to knock on the doors of ROX's base. They have the super empowered minions, 2 members in the top, 2 members in the mid, 1 in the bot. How do ROX answer?
G2 pushing in every single lane with these empowered minions. Trick does so much damage to towers. I mean, what do you do about Expect? He's not even the Fedist member, and he can just walk up to any amount of these ROX players. There's another tower going down. This inhibitor is sure to fall.
ROX are running out of answers right now. As you rightly said, the fact that Expect can effectively 1 versus 5 is making things extraordinarily difficult. And now G2, they're just slowly working their way through the base as Songhwan has respawned.
If you're wanting to watch a Baron power play today, this is what you do. You walk up and you take whatever objective you feel like. 2 inhibitors down now. Expect even just gonna walk past the tower just to get out of the base.
And G2 aren't even done yet. They don't have the Baron buff anymore. Oh, and it still is actually
just about to run out, yeah.
But they're now looking to work towards that 3rd inhibitor. They just have to wait for the minion lines to push in. You can see Trick, he's still keeping the pressure up. Expect is going to go back, buy, and then just TP back in once more. G2, they just want to be unrelenting with their pressure.
And we've talked about the fact that there is wave clear here for ROX, but not if Expect and Trick are just walking at the backline. They won't be able to clear these waves. And in the meantime, the rest of the team will pressure Trick. Going to be using his ultimate. Current Call comes on through Songhwan, the target of those bullets, but the tower has dropped. They're not looking for the fight. They're just looking for the inhibitor. G2 are relentless in this one. Linderang on the front line trying to start this fight, but they just can't collapse.
And now G2, they're happy with what they've gotten. All 3 inhibitors are down for the ROX Tigers. They don't want to push it anymore, so they're just going to go back to base, pick up the gold that they've gotten. And this is how the Baron play kicks off. Now, Expect is the one that's trying to soak up the damage, and it's just Mythy. He takes a little bit too damage earlier on. But regardless, it still results in the Baron. Great charm from Perks to be able to buy time to enable them to get the shutdown onto Linderang. A bit cheeky from Perks to come back in and take away the kill.
Okay,
Good thing that there was no vision in the pit, otherwise perhaps Mickey could have gotten himself a return. Regardless, it was a good decision from G2. The way in which they set up the vision in the top side of ROX's jungle to make it difficult for them to just walk in and contest is exactly the way in which you want to be playing around that Baron. They secure it, and it enables them to get all 3 inhibitors, and now it's just a matter of time before they close out the game.
And we go all the way back to Champion Select. This Ahri pick was, in of itself, a very
risky.
It was a risky pick, and also a very brave pick to go up against Mickey on this Jace. It has paid dividends. 8-0-3 for Perks. He has been doing so much damage in these skirmishes. And now G2 are posturing to end this match.
But it all comes back to Trick and his early ganks. The fact that he was able to get a level 2 gank onto Mickey, the fact that they were able to get a double buff onto Expect, thanks to the skirmishes that happened top lane. Trick has been playing out of his mind in this second game. And thanks to him, G2 are going to be able to equalize the series after this deciding fight.
Yeah, they're going to go in onto Linderang. That's going to be Wild Growth, keeping him alive a little bit, but Guardian Angel's popped. Perk's not found a good target just yet. Charm isn't quite going to land, but he flashes forward. He's going for Songwan. Repel keeps him alive, and it's actually Perks that goes down first. This is a bad fight for G2 so far. Redemption coming through. Mickey wants to go in. You can see it in his positioning. Another bomb onto Mithy. These health bars are low. Bad news for G2 as the bombs come on through. It's Sangyun on the side dealing so much damage. Sven is going to go down. G2 fall apart.
It seems I sung the trumpet of victory too soon because G2 over-aggressed. Perks ends up getting caught. ROX are able to find themselves a winning team fight, but they still cannot move away from their base. The super minions are far too many, but at the very least, ROX are able to hold on.
Let's take another look at this fight as well, because over-aggression here from G2.
And just watch Perks in this fight, because yes, they're able to take down the tank very early on, but Perks wants to go aggressive. Great exhaust into the cocoon, shuts down the big damage dealer of G2. Now, Mickey, he's just going to keep throwing out his poke. He feels confident enough thanks to all the damage that G2 has taken, which just enables him to join the fight, and then ROX can start cleaning up. Linderang with a great TP flank closes off the escape route of G2, and they're able to buy themselves a little more time.
We thought this game was over. We thought ROX were down and out and we were going to the full 3 games, but they are not going down without a fight. Baron will be started now for G2. Let's not forget, they are still well and truly in the lead. They are still well and truly in control.
I mean, while ROX did get a great fight, G2 should not fall for the same trick, or they should not make the same mistakes even. Perks needs to calm down. They have a Baron buff now. They have 3 empowered super minion waves, and they just need to be patient. They just slowly walk into the base and use that buff to close out the game.
This is the thing. They don't have to be anywhere near that situation once more. Perks won't have his flash for this fight. Trick walking past Songhwan there. Songhwan needs to be the one that's
I don't know.
Actually, I don't know why he's there. But these super minions will be going in. Linderang onto the back line. Mithy's very low, but Stranglethorns keeps him alive. Repel to follow that one, but it's traded kill for kill. Guardian Angel on the jungler, but Linderang has fallen, and G2 just want to end this game. Songhwan is going to be sniped out by Sven. They're going for their towers. Expect Happy to soak up this damage as Perks just throwing out as many little blue magic. I don't know where I'm going with that one, but it is going to be the end of the game. G2 are going to a 3rd map in this series.
G2 come out the gate swinging in game 2. They picked the Rengar. All of Europe sigh. They get so worried when they see that lock in, but Trick says, aha, I can play this champion and I can play it damn well. Great early game from the G2 lineup. They stop the early pushing power of the ROX Tigers, and they're able to close out game 2.
The Fox and the Tiger finishing that one out. We're going to go to a quick break, but we're going into game 3 shortly.